Hey folks, and welcome back. So, no doubt you'll have seen by now the announcement of Legion, the expansion that will be following on from Warlords of Draenor, and no doubt you'll also have seen the news that we are now down 4.4 million subscribers since the start of this year. Not even since the start of the expansion, the start of this year. We're now sitting at 5.6 million subscribers, and I'm sure Blizzard are hoping that with the seemingly wish-listy nature of Legion, Illidan's back, Neutral Hub City is going to be Dalaran again, we're going after the Legion at the Tomb of Sargeras, Gul'dan himself is also of course back, and of course the big one that people have been asking for years, new hero class Demon Hunter. A lot of what was announced and revealed, it does feel very much like the devs just sat down and thought, right, what's the list of things that the players have been asking for years? And they just threw it all into the mix. I mean, Ashara and everything is going to be mixed in here somewhere. Don't get me wrong, I'm hopeful. I'm quietly hopeful that they can actually pull this off. But we all remember how hyped we were before the launch of Warlords of Draenor, and even during the first week or two of the expansion's launch. And this is despite the fact that the first week of Warlords of Draenor was completely unplayable. After that first leveling experience, again, as I've said before, was brilliant. And we were all still very, very much aboard the hype train. But then the expansion actually happened, and it turned out to be absolutely god-awfully bad. And I think that's demonstrable by any reasonable standards, because we've lost so many subscribers in such a short amount of time. But what I want to talk about is the potential for a lot more simplification of the game going forward, particularly the removal of gear and weapon drops in Legion and beyond. Now, Legion itself will have absolutely zero weapon drops, either in dungeons or in raiding. That has been confirmed by the devs. You're expected to get your artifact weapon for your specific spec, and that will be your weapon for the entire expansion. As the expansion goes on, you will upgrade this weapon in various ways, and it will grow in strength with the rest of your gear. In theory, I'm fine with that, because the feeling of falling behind, particularly as a DPS player, falling behind with the rest of your raid, or from the rest of your raid, seeing everybody else getting their weapon upgrades ahead of you, and still you're playing with a weapon from the previous tier, maybe the tier before that even. There's no worse feeling than thinking that you're losing out on performance because you can't get that drop. So in terms of that, I'm quite optimistic that this will prove an improvement over drops in raids. However, it does leave a backdoor open that they'll do exactly the same with gear in expansions beyond Legion, where you maybe get a chest piece or a helm at the start of the expansion, and you do exactly the same thing and upgrade that over the course of the expansion. What that would mean for boss drops and for raiding and for gear drops, we don't know. All we know at the minute is that weapon drops are non-existent in Legion, but you will get relics that will upgrade your weapons as you go through the expansion. Of course, the other big news was that there is going to be absolutely no PvP gear at all in Legion as well, so that has been excised from the game. This, however, is a really good change, I think, because it will hopefully 100% separate PvP and PvE going forward. For years we've sort of suffered with this dual system where PvE players can play in PvP and PvP players can play in PvE, and there's a mixture and a crossover of abilities and gear and weapons and what have you, and it made it basically impossible for the devs to tune both independently of each other. They couldn't tune PvE abilities without having a knock-on effect on PvP and vice versa. So with this prestige system that they're introducing, similar to that in Call of Duty, your PvP strength will be determined via two methods. One is your PvE item level. That has been confirmed by J. Allen Brack. And the other is, of course, the gaining of abilities through the prestige system. Now, of course, when you get to the max level in the prestige system, you can trade it all in and get some sort of cosmetic reward like a mount or a title or a new icon for your unit frame or a cosmetic piece of gear, something like that there. But Honor and Conquest will be they'll be excised in a similar manner to how Justice and Valor were at the start of Warlords. So there will be no more gear currencies in the game, because I'm assuming they're not going to bring Apexis forward from Warlords either. So what sort of catch-up mechanic they're going to have for allowing you to bolster your gear? Because although bonus rolls are okay, they're not a solution. They're not. This is where Justice and Valor filled a very, very big hole, and they were a solid solution. They also give players a damn good reason to run 5-mans even at the end of the life of an expansion. I mean, I was still running 5-mans for Valor right up until the very end of Mists of Pandaria, and I massively outgeared those things. I could solo those things by the time we got to the end of the expansion on my pally. But yet, you found me in there running them on a fairly regular basis just to pick up a bit more Valor and fill out those last couple of weapon and item slots that I couldn't get the drops for. I think players prefer having that sort of backup system, that sort of safety net, knowing that they can always pick up certain pieces from a gear vendor by earning currency. Apexis didn't really fill that void because Apexis was just, it was awful. The method by which it was gained was just a grind. It was a pure grind. Players, I think, just far more preferred to engage in like 5-man content to get Valor and stuff to actually acquire gear that way rather than just grinding mobs out, because that's essentially what the Apexis areas in Tanaan Jungle are. They're just mob grinds. You're filling up the blue bar, or you're killing X amount of orcs or X amount of demons and what have you. So the door, like I said, it is open there for them doing what they're doing with the artifact weapons in Legion, and doing that with gear for PvE in future as well. So you could see gear drops go the way of the dodo completely as well. Now, with PvP gear being removed from the game, this of course makes it easier for the art team to concentrate on producing art for PvE gear alone. They'll also have to produce art for the artifact weapons as well, but a lot of that could be done up front and before the expansion's released. So there's a lot of work's been taken off the shoulders of the artwork team in that regard. You've seen some of that with the current tier of PvE versus PvP gear, where it's all just plain recolors. I mean, Warlords itself has just been the expansion of the recolor. From mounts to gear to weapons, just throughout it has been recolor and reskin after recolor after reskin. And again, that shows lack of effort and production throughout the expansion as a whole. I mean, artifact weapons already, for the most part, use or reuse iconic weapons as their base models. And there's maybe 4 or 5 extra skins on top of those that can be earned various ways via PvE, PvP, etc. I mean, Warlords have actually fewer weapon models throughout leveling and dungeons than any expansion before it. Wrath, I think, had something like 6 times the amount of weapon skins that Warlords did. And because the art team can easily do 36 reskins, is that what we're going to get going forward after Legion? Are we going to keep these artifact weapons after Legion's over and just keep getting reskins and upgrades and reskins and upgrades? I'm sort of hoping not, purely just due to variety, but we'll see. The other big thing was the Demon Hunter. It is a class that has 2 specs, only 2 specs. One is a melee DPS and the other is a tank spec. This could potentially be disastrous, because this could be a sign of future class design where they're cutting back on the number of specs that new classes have going forward as well. I mean, fair enough, their justification for it with the Demon Hunter, yes, you couldn't imagine a Demon Hunter being a healer, but I mean, you could quite easily imagine a Demon Hunter being sort of a ranged class with thrown weapons maybe. So it's indicative again of a cutback in production levels, and from what I've seen from the presentation, from the announcement, that we're looking again at another year-long expansion. They have said that the expansion will release next year, so I'm expecting that in Q1 of next year. I think there was a leak that says that the pre-expansion patch will come towards the end of this year, so I think we can solidly expect that the expansion will release Q1 next year. Even at that still gives us a good 9 months or so, up to 9 months anyway, in Hellfire Citadel, and that's not going to last 9 months. We're already nearly halfway through a heroic already. But introducing a new class with only 2 specs, does that mean that if a spec has trouble working over the course of several expansions, that they could remove a spec from a class in future? With survival for hunters going as a melee spec in Legion, does that mean that if that doesn't work, because it never really worked too well as a range spec over the last couple of expansions, it was fine in Siege of Orgrimmar, but in Warlords it has suffered badly, especially in Tier 18 where it's just completely uncompetitive. So if survival doesn't work as a melee spec in Legion, does that leave the door open for them to actually remove it completely as a spec? It's nice to see that they're actually looking at class homogenization, and particularly within a class, the different specs, and trying to actually differentiate how different specs feel for a class. Particularly the hunters, because that's probably one of the ones that's getting the biggest change since the Warlock revamp. Survival's going to be melee with a pet, apparently. We'll see if that actually comes to be. Beast Mastery is going to be the ranged spec with a pet, and then they're intending marksmanship to be the ranged spec with no pet. Now, for somebody that actually likes having a pet, I have actually quite come to love marks as a spec. I was solidly BM right up until the start of Hellfire Citadel, but over the course of tier 18 so far, I've actually fallen really in love with Marks as a spec. The feeling of just standing there and being a sniper is great. I love it. It's just hard hitting, big hard smacks, and being a class that specialises in bursting adds down. It's great. I love it so far. But I really do miss having a pet. Hopefully if I do manage to get the 4-piece for the tier 18 gear, I'll be able to switch to focusing shot and get my pet back. But it fully depends on whether I get the 4-piece or not, because the 4-piece with focusing shot is on a par with Lone Wolf without the 4-piece. So Lone Wolf, obviously, with Marks going a solo spec with no pet, it will become baseline then for marksmanship. What that means for the talent, it'll probably get removed and replaced with something else in Legion then. Will we get another row of talents for all specs? I don't think we will, actually. I think they're going to concentrate that effort into the upgrades on the weapon rather than the talents for the player. In terms of the features for the expansion as a whole, we get the usual set of features with this expansion. Level cap is now 110, so we're getting another 10 levels rather than the 5 we had in the previous couple of expansions. Again, no weapon drops at all. You'll get your artifact weapon during the start of the leveling experience, and that will be it until the very end of the entire expansion. New content, Broken Isles, comes with 6 new zones, although during the presentation there was a 7th zone that they have since excised from the map. So the 6 zones are Broken Shore, Azuna, Stormheim, Suramar, Valshara and High Mountain. But we are missing the extra region that was originally on the map there, Thaldranath. Apparently Acaris was going to be moved to the Broken Isles as well, because it's on the initial map as well, on the opposite side of the Broken Shores from Dalaran. The other features are, of course, Demon Hunters coming. We'll obviously get the new raids and dungeons, and Blizzard have said that they want to do better by dungeons this time around, because dungeons in Warlords, they lasted about 3-4 weeks once you got the max level, and it was bye-bye. You were done with them. Once you got to end level 630, bang, you were off into raids and that was it. You never looked at them again, because the rewards for them were not worth the while, especially with DPS queues being like 30, 40, 50 minutes. There was no reason to actually queue for them at all. The big thing for a lot of players, especially me, will be the transmog wardrobe. If they can pull this off, and I hope to God they can, it will free up acres of bag space for me. Acres of bag space. I have so much bag space consumed by old gear sets on both my Paladin and my Hunter. I have both characters have both void storage tabs completely full, and my bank is completely full to the gills with fairly large bags filled with old gear purely for transmog. So if they can pull off this transmog wardrobe similar to what they did with the heirloom tab, I will be so happy. It will give us back so much bag space, so much bag space. In place of the garrisons, we're going to get class-specific order halls. The location and style of these are specific to each class. So Paladins, for instance, they get a hall underneath Light's Hope Chapel, which is fairly good. Warlocks, they'll get theirs set up on a Legion portal world somewhere. So it'll all be green and fell and sitting in the middle of space somewhere. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out, because apparently what I've heard is that both factions will be in the class order hall. So you'll have Alliance and Horde in the same hall together. It'll be good as well because it's not instanced to each individual specific player. Even though you're meant to be the leader of your class now, you will see everybody else of your class in that hall. So only Paladins will be able to enter the Paladin hall, only Warlocks will be able to go to the portal world, etc. So when I go to mine on my Hunter, I'll only see other Hunters in there. You won't be able to get in there if you're not a Hunter, etc. So that'll be interesting because apparently you're not going to be there a lot, which is good, because garrisons completely kill the social element of Warlords for me. So hopefully actually we'll be able to speak to the other faction, because it wouldn't really make much sense if you're the leader of your class and you're going up against a big, massive, potentially world-ending threat like the Burning Legion, who are undertaking an invasion, apparently, that's bigger than even the War of the Ancients. If you're the leader of your class, you need to be able to speak to at least 50% of them. It makes no sense that you're not going to be able to communicate with players from the other faction of your class. It just makes no sense at all. So I really do hope that they don't get their heads up their asses about this, because even during the presentation they said, the Horde and the Alliance, they're at each other's throats again. I'm like, oh, really? Is it? Have we not got past this crap so far? So it's been 10 years, wind your necks in, fuck me. And then the other thing is, of course, you're getting another character boost, which is going to add another 10 quid onto the expansion price, and this time it's up to 100. So a couple of other interviews were done today and yesterday, and a few other bits and bobs have come to light. There will not be another stat squish for this expansion, so it will be held over probably until the next one. They've said that we're probably still full expansion away from getting DPS levels back to where they were at the end of Siege. I'm seeing players at the minute maybe doing 170 to 250k DPS. On the pool, I'm doing about 140k on my Hunter. So given the creep in power levels, depending on how powerful the artifact weapons have come over the course of the expansion as well, I suppose, I'd say they probably couldn't leave it longer than the end of the next expansion. With Demon Hunters becoming the tank spec, Demonology Warlocks, they're going to be refocused. They're going to be like the Beast Mastery class for Warlocks. They're going to focus on summoning demons and making them more powerful and doing their work for them. Whereas Affliction's going to be pretty much straight out a dot spec, and Destruction is going to be like the Fire Mage. It's going to be the big bursty damage spec. Disc Priests as well are getting a rework. They are going to be closer to 50% DPS and 50% healing. That's the theory anyway. So Atonement is going to become a thing again, thankfully, because I actually quite liked Atonement when I was on my priest, so I'm hoping I can actually pull this one off. I'm hoping that the difference between a Disc Priest and a proper full-out priest isn't too heavy. Glyphs are going to be a weapon of only one class, again going to be Demon Hunters. So only Demon Hunters will be able to use Glyphs, but at that, the Glyphs are going to be obviously the artifact weapon, so there's only going to be one set throughout the entire expansion. In terms of dungeon difficulties, there's going to be the obvious normal and heroic, but the devs haven't actually decided as yet if they're actually going to do mythic dungeons from the start, which is fair enough because mythic dungeons sort of fit in towards the end of Warlords because of the level of gear that they were pitched at. If you have mythic in from the start, where do you pitch it? Do you make it a necessary third level of difficulty in the gearing process, going from freshly dinged 110 through to raiding? Do you have to do normal, heroic, then mythic to get into raids? It wouldn't really work. I don't think it's too much work. It's too much effort when you're so used to having normal while you're leveling, then into heroics once you get the max level. That then gets you into raids. I think adding another difficulty level in between there for the sake of it won't really work. It will at the end of an expansion where people have alts and they want to get them geared up and so on, but I don't think it works at the very start of the expansion. Challenge modes aren't really guaranteed to be added to Legion as yet, so they may be a 2 expansion feature where they were introduced in Mists and were carried over into Warlords. They're not entirely sure if they're going to add them in Legion yet, which is a shame. Even though I haven't run any in Warlords yet, I completed them all to gold in Mists on the Paladin, but I haven't done any at all in Warlords, purely through boredom. Can't be arsed. And the rewards, not really that great, to be honest. In terms of the artifact weapon power, they have said that you will be able to unlock every single trait in the artifact's weapon tree. So you'll be able to take different paths to unlocking them all throughout the leveling experience and throughout the time that you have the weapon in the expansion. But by the time you get to the end of the expansion, you'll be able to have the entire thing, the entire tree unlocked and used. So everybody will eventually arrive at the same place, but your method of getting there might be a little bit different from the hunter next to you. So as I said earlier, the artifact weapons themselves, they have relic slots. That will determine the item's raw DPS, item level, stats, and so on. They'll have also modifiers to the traits you've chosen. And relics are things that you can socket into the artifact weapon, and they're rewarded from completing sort of major quest lines, raids, dungeons, all sort of things you used to get weapons from in the past. You'll get relics from now, and use those to upgrade and modify your weapon. They have said that artifact weapons will be able to be transmogged over. So if you're not a big fan of, say, the hunter bow, you will be able to transmog your favourite bow on top of it. They don't know if you'll be able to transmog the artifact weapons look onto another weapon in the future. They haven't decided that yet, but I imagine they probably will do. Another interesting point for a lot of players, including myself, professions in Warlords, they managed to completely, and I will be blunt here, they managed to completely fuck them up 100%. They took professions from being fairly useful in Mists of Pandaria and completely butt-fucked them in Warlords. Completely wrecked them. Just the method by which you leveled the profession up, the way they gated materials, just the entire way they did professions this expansion was just bullshit. It was idiotic. So apparently they have a larger professions team in now for Legion, and apparently lots of new things are coming. So they've heard the feedback about the professions in Warlords, thank God. Well, they say they have anyway. So that's a look through the features and the ideas that the devs have at the moment for Legion. Like I said, it's due, they say, for release next year, and I think that's going to be Q1 next year. They can't realistically, at this point, having lost 4.4 million subscribers since January, They cannot realistically go a similar amount of time without a new expansion. They have to release just after the new year next year. Like I said, there was a leak, well, an apparent leak anyway, that said that the pre-expansion patch would be towards the end of this year. I hope that's true. I was sort of hoping that it would be sooner, and that we were going to get the expansion by maybe BlizzCon time, but it doesn't look as though that's going to be happening now, so it looks like we're going to be in Hellfire Citadel for at least another 7 or 8 months yet. So settle in, kids, you're in for the long haul, again, despite them actually promising to do better this time. Not happening. Right, so yes, that's a lot of info dump about Legion, and my thoughts on it as well. So I'll see you in the next video. Cheerio.